Making the case. John Kerry's big challenges tonight here in Boston, telling America who he is, what he stands for, why he should be president. The message, how the Edwards speech played with some of the most sought-after voters, the undecideds, and the Republican war room, trying to get a word in edgewise. Caught. He is said to be a key Al-Qaeda figure linked to the embassy bombings. Tonight, he's in custody. And drenched. Extreme weather, daring rescues in the American Southwest.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from the Democratic National Convention in Boston.
Good evening. This is John Kerry's night at the Democratic Convention. The stage is his, and the audience goes well beyond this hall. He's appealing to the American people, especially those still trying to make up their minds about the election, the independent voters, and Republicans having second thoughts about President Bush. And his big speech comes when America is at war and worried about another terrorist attack, a time of economic anxiety and cultural divides. We're going to begin tonight with NBC's Brian Williams here in the hall. Brian?
Tom, as you know, there's a golden rule for the nominee on the last day of a convention. Do nothing to take away from your message in prime time. And by that standard, John Kerry looked every bit the nominee. An afternoon bike ride through the streets he knows well to break the cabin fever from a day spent practicing his speech.
Fabulous, thank you.
His day started with a visit to the arena, teleprompter familiarity, and a swipe at his traveling media family.
Members of the Fourth Estate, I've called you here to tell you that your reign is over.
John Kerry will leave here tonight with just 95 days to go.
We shall be free.
Democrats see the incumbent president as vulnerable on the war, the 9/11 fallout, and the economy.
How are you?
Still, many experts believe if Kerry wins, it won't be because Americans have fallen in love with him. Political veteran Lawrence O'Donnell has watched Kerry for decades and says voters have chosen him 5 times because he appeals as a competent alternative.
The public doesn't love John Kerry. Maybe 30% of his voters love him. My mother loves him. A lot of people do love him. But it's an unemotional choice, that final choice of John Kerry. I don't think he's capable of becoming a Beatle and creating some Beatlemania overnight and some incredible affection.
Kerry's speech is expected to run just under an hour, and according to excerpts, will include the following. Quote, "In these dangerous days, there is a right way and a wrong way to be strong. Strength is more than tough words. We need to make America once again a beacon in the world. We need to be looked up to and not just feared." Perhaps the closest thing to a controversy at this 4-day Kerry celebration came last night when the Reverend Al Sharpton went way off the script.
Read my lips, our vote is not for sale.
He had been allotted 6 minutes. Instead, the firebrand from New York went just under 20 and went after the Bush White House.
And a retirement plan.
It was a crowd pleaser in the hall, but did not match the TV theme of the night as delivered by VP nominee John Edwards.
When your parents call and tell you their medicine's going through the roof, they can't keep up, you tell them hope is on the way.
And in their search for something different, Kerry's handlers plan a non-traditional entrance for the nominee tonight along a floor route here in the arena. Hasn't been tried since Al Gore 4 years ago. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's Brian Williams here in Boston. One of the main goals of this convention, of course, is to persuade undecided voters in crucial swing states to embrace John Kerry. One of those states this year is Ohio. No Republican has ever been elected president without carrying Ohio. So the Democrats are going after it. Here's NBC's Ron Allen in Ohio.
Voters in Stark County, Ohio, from its rolling farmland to its Rust Belt smokestacks, have a knack for picking presidents, 9 of the last 10.
First, we're going to help you pay.
Swing voters, some still undecided, whom we asked to listen to John Edwards at Kent State University's Stark.
He's a charmer.
Is that good?
Well, I mean, a charmer and a person who puts action, who puts things into action is 2 different things.
A tough crowd. Jennifer Bauer planning to vote for the first time, impressed by Edwards' style and his life story.
I think he was saying what he thought what he thinks the country wants to hear.
Anita Jackson, a homemaker who voted for Al Gore, still has her doubts.
He recognizes that there's two different Americas, and that's dividing us. But, you know, coming from him, he's on that top part, so how can he understand where I'm coming from?
The issues here, jobs, 12,000 lost since President Bush took office. The war. Do you think John Edwards told you what you want to hear about the Iraq situation?
He wants what the American people want out of this war, finish the job, get our soldiers home.
But Phil Elam, a small business owner, may still vote for the president, as he did in 2000. Experience and Edwards' perceived lack of it matters to Julie Farley, a working mother of two.
The 20 or 30 minutes that we saw, I'm not completely convinced about that.
Did Edwards convince you now to support John Kerry?
A little, but not fully.
Bob Phillips, a veteran, wanted to hear more from Edwards about himself.
You tell them hope is on the way.
That message had an effect on Derek Brandon, finishing an MBA and looking for work.
Dad worked in a steel mill. I don't have the income or the buying power that my father had.
Like Edwards, a mill worker's son, discouraged that factories which employed generations here may be shutting down.
I still have hope, but I don't have dreams anymore.
In the end, Brandon was leaning to the Democrats, but still not convinced they have a plan.
Thank you.
So while Edwards made his pitch to America, these Stark County voters say he did not make the sale. Ron Allen, NBC News, Canton, Ohio.
Overseas tonight, word that an Al-Qaeda fugitive has been captured, a man that the United States has been wanting to catch and question for a long time. That story from NBC's Justice Department correspondent Pete Williams tonight.
He's been on the U.S. government's most wanted terror list with a $25 million reward offered for his arrest. Ahmed Khalfan Gailani, originally from Tanzania and thought to be in his 30s, has been a fugitive ever since the U.S. charged him with helping to bomb the U.S. embassy in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 1998. 11 people were killed and 85 others hurt. Just 2 months ago, FBI Director Robert Mueller asked for public help in finding Gailani and another bombing suspect.
They are known to have participated in the 1998 East Africa embassy bombings and have the wherewithal, the skill, and the ability to undertake attacks both against American interests overseas as well as in the United States.
Pakistani authorities say Gailani was actually arrested in the eastern city of Gujarat in this building over the weekend, along with a dozen or so others. Intelligence officials believe he'll know not only about the Africa bombings, which also targeted the U.S. Embassy in Kenya, but also about the November 2002 terror bombing of a hotel in Kenya used by Israeli tourists and the attempt to shoot down an Israeli charter jet at the same time. While Gailani was not a top Al-Qaeda operative, U.S. officials say his arrest gets a suspected killer off the streets and could provide new insights into attacks now in the planning stages. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
Iraq watch tonight, a grim new threat from kidnappers holding 7 foreign truck drivers hostage, demanding that their companies leave Iraq and stop working with the U.S. military. In the latest videotape given to news organizations, the militants are threatening to kill one of the hostages tomorrow if there is no response. This footage shows an Indian man being held at gunpoint. Also today, funerals for some of the dozens killed in yesterday's massive suicide car bombing in the city of Bakuba, one of the many attacks targeting Iraqi police recruits. And another sign of trouble, the sudden postponement of a conference of national leaders who were to elect an interim National Assembly in Iraq, a key step in establishing faith in the new Iraqi government. That meeting has been put off now for 2 weeks. In other news tonight, as we reported last night, the Saudis are floating a proposal for a Muslim military force to begin to replace American forces in Iraq. It's a highly unusual proposal, so why are the Saudis pushing this now? Here's NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell.
As violence continues to explode in Iraq, Iraq's next-door neighbor, Saudi Arabia, is alarmed that anger at U.S. troops in Iraq is inflaming the insurgency and fears that the violence could cross the border, even topple the Saudi regime.
Your Majesty, it's very good to see you again.
So in talks with Colin Powell, the Saudis are proposing that Muslim troops be recruited to help put down the rebellion in Iraq. Powell today with Iraq's Prime Minister Iyad Allawi.
There are many questions that have to be answered, but we do welcome the Saudi initiative and we'll be examining it very, very closely.
I call upon the leaders of the Islamic countries and the Arab countries to close ranks, because this is really basically it's our fight.
Which countries might take part? U.S. officials say Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Algeria, Morocco, and Bangladesh. But not Iraq's neighbors like Egypt or Turkey or Iran, with which the former regime fought wars. Today, a militant group immediately threatened on its website to attack any Muslim force, saying, "Our swords will be drawn in the face of anyone who cooperates with the Jews and the Christians," raising concerns such a force could spark even more terror.
This will only serve to provoke a response from Islamists in their countries, and will provoke retaliation from Al-Qaeda or affiliates of Al-Qaeda in their home countries.
And who would control the troops? The Saudis want the UN to do it. The U.S. and Iraq want the current U.S. command. At the Democratic convention, Senator Joe Biden said despite the problems, Muslim troops could help.
Bottom line, though, if they can shoot straight, if they're real, if they are in fact ready to increase the number of forces we have in Iraq, that's positive. We need more forces and less of an American face on it.
Tonight, NBC News has learned that the Saudis are so concerned about their safety, they are also pressing the U.S. to spend another $500 million to beef up security along the Saudi-Iraq border. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Boston.
Up next, NBC News in depth tonight. Boston is not just for Democrats. A few intrepid Republicans have their own war room. We're going to take you deep inside. And later, a wicked summer storm in Texas leads to a wild river rescue. NBC News in depth tonight. The Democrats have the spotlight, but there's a tenacious band of Republicans here this week trying to take some of the shine off the big Kerry Edwards party in Boston. NBC's Campbell Brown went inside the GOP war room.
It's called the bunker.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
2 blocks from this week's Democratic convention.
This is the AP script of his speech.
The 38 people working here are no fans of John Kerry.
I'm the proverbial skunk at the garden party.
Morning. This is the Republican Rapid Response Team, whose job it is to get a red message out in a very blue week.
Hey, who's on the call?
Dan, Kevin, and Heather.
We're getting our message.
This week's theme, that the Democratic convention is an extreme makeover for John Kerry, a weak liberal tax raiser posing as a strong, decisive leader.
How do you break through when you've got tens of thousands of Democrats here rallying, enthusiastic?
It's not easy. We know we're swimming upstream. We felt like we have a better opportunity because of the sort of cosmetic nature of this convention.
The Republican message is everywhere, on the web, on signs, in photos.
Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words.
The message is even on the press credentials. Surrogates like former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani are enlisted to help get out the message on radio, TV, and with daily press conferences.
John Kerry has spent his whole convention doing a makeover.
I think this is extreme makeover.
This would be a reinvention convention, a makeover convention.
And when the Democrats are gathering, the Rapid Response Team is watching.
May none but the honest and wise ever rule under this roof. In November, we will make those words ring true again.
Hey, Kilday?
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Can you add that to the attacks document?
Quickly edited and approved, a press release claiming the Democrats are going negative is out less than an hour later.
The entire press corps is going to be getting this information tonight. It will enter into stories overnight. It'll be in the papers tomorrow morning.
So while they may not be invited guests this week, the Republicans are doing their best to crash the party. Campbell Brown, NBC News, Boston.
For more coverage of Decision 2004, including video of all the major convention speeches, we invite you to log on to our website, politics.msnbc.com. When we come back, severe flooding hits Texas, and an economic storm hits Boston.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, brought to you in part by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
The death of Nobel Prize-winning scientist Francis Crick, who, along with James Watson, cracked the code of DNA, the cell structure, back in 1953. It was a monumental achievement. Crick was 88 years old. He'd been fighting colon cancer. Well, DNA tests and other biotechnology are routine today. None of that would have happened without Crick and Watson's work a half-century ago. Also, Susie Buffett, the wife of billionaire investor Warren Buffett, has died. Although the couple had lived separately for years, they were devoted to each other, and Warren Buffett was at her side in Wyoming on a holiday when she died of a stroke. Mrs. Buffett was a major supporter of Planned Parenthood, a music patron, and a generous philanthropist for a variety of other causes. She was 72 years old. This had been an extremely dry July for people in and around Dallas, Texas, but as NBC Jim Cummins reports tonight, when it finally did rain overnight, it more than poured.
The storm struck North Texas in the middle of the night, dumping more than a foot of rain in some places, including the Dallas suburb of Lancaster, where even the police headquarters was knocked out by the floods.
Basically, we've been completely flooded out within the city. We've got about 170, 200 homes that have been flooded out.
Authorities received more than 80 calls for high water rescues. This one, a 16-year-old boy clinging to a tree, trying to avoid being swept away by a creek that became a river. Brandon Board made the first call for help.
I had hung up the phone and heard the sirens.
Fireman Gene Bird said this daring rescue was just another day at the office for the members of the Fort Worth Swiftwater Rescue Team.
Since we had to hurry up and get him out before he got too exhausted to hang on, we went ahead and did a fast, continuous loop rescue.
The boy is fine. At daybreak, only one person had been killed by the storm, but roads resembled rivers. Parking lots became ponds. Hundreds of homes and autos were underwater. Bridges and railroad tracks were washed out. 3 interstate highways were shut down for a time. 45,000 homes lost power. Small businesses were devastated. These manufactured houses had been swept by floodwaters to the river's edge. After the wettest June on record, the month of July was bone dry around here until last night. And there was more rain in the forecast. Jim Cummins, NBC News, Lancaster, Texas.
On Wall Street today, modest gains. The Dow was up just over 12 points. NASDAQ was up almost 23 points at the end of the day. I'll be right back with some final thoughts from Boston.
Today's show and
now to the scene outside the Fleet Center, where it appears the warnings about traffic jams, protesters, road closings, and random security checks worked. The streets of Boston have been as empty as an early Sunday morning all week, but the price of that is high for some Bostonians who expected a bonanza. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
At Francesca's Italian restaurant in Boston, this week was supposed to be big. But instead, most of the tables sit empty, the wine is still corked, and extra staff sent home. Business is down 80%.
We expected a big business with the convention, and it's been really slow.
It's a common complaint, customers scared away. From the empty sidewalks along trendy Newbury Street to the North End, normally choked with traffic, Boston is quiet. Even the trolley companies, normally filled with summertime tourists, say business is down 50%. Some business owners say it's like a New England blizzard without the snow. Where is everyone? Mostly here in the Fleet Center from mid-afternoon till late at night. The hotels are making money, they're full. But with so many parties and free food, few people are shopping or eating out.
Boston is the site for our 2004 convention.
Thank you very much.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. 2 years ago, business cheered the news the Democratic National Convention was coming to Boston. Amid predictions it could bump $154 million into the economy. Instead, with 40 miles of roadway closed, trains shut down, and so much extra security, it's now expected to cost the economy more than $8 million.
They have managed to keep the people from Boston, our local people, away from Boston.
Today, Mayor Thomas Menino was offering free parking and concerts this weekend, hoping to lure shoppers back downtown.
It's not about these 4 days. It's about the economic impact in the out years.
In New York, organizers of next month's Republican National Convention hope to avoid similar problems despite similar security, like a lockdown around Madison Square Garden.
There's a big difference between Boston and New York. The difference is New York doesn't close for anyone, not even the President of the United States.
But back in Boston, where the waiters are struggling to stay awake, the talk is of lifting a glass once the Democrats and their security leave town. Tom Costello, NBC News, Boston.
As this convention wraps up with the acceptance speech of John Kerry tonight, the real work begins tomorrow in getting the voters tagged and ready for delivery on Election Day. And for Democrats especially, women are a special target on issues such as abortion, gun control, and education. Teresa Hines Kerry, the candidate's wife, and Elizabeth Edwards, Senator Edwards' wife, are expected to take very prominent roles in pursuit of that vote. Republicans are said to be relishing the matchup between Teresa Hines Kerry and Laura Bush. Now, no president has been elected simply because of his wife, but in modern campaigns, the role of the spouse now is much more strategic than cosmetic. One more reason why this campaign promises to be an epic. I'm Tom Brokaw in Boston. I'll see you later tonight for John Kerry's speech. Coverage on NBC beginning at 10 Eastern. Continuous coverage, of course, on MSNBC.
Almost matched Bill Clinton, and that's saying something. It was a great speech. He came out strong from the beginning and never missed a beat. And I think he did achieve the two goals I thought he had to do. Number one, let the American people know what he's about, how his life experience shaped his values, and then number two, define the issues for the American people. And he did a great job of it, laying it out one by one, clearly and concisely. And then lastly, when he called for a different type of politics, I think that's going to hit a responsive chord in the American people and really put the Republicans on notice that if they do a negative campaign, they do it at their own peril.
He obviously got to people in this room. There was an enormous amount of enthusiasm here on the floor. But in a state like yours, in Pennsylvania, a swing state, did he make a connection with people who are at home watching on TV, still on the fence or still reachable?
Oh, there's no question in mind. I believe that a lot of Pennsylvanians have concluded that the Bush administration has failed to meet the challenges of the country. They were waiting to see whether John Kerry could be an effective leader. I think the answer to that tonight in every person's mind was a resounding yes.
Governor Ed Rendell, thanks for being with us. Let's go back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Campbell. Joe's making a very good point, which is obviously caught.
Are ahead of us with great faith in the American people. I accept your nomination for President of the United States.